Hello, welcome to the Irish NFL Show Bulletin Board Edition. This episode is Super Bowl free. We're not talking about the Seahawks or the Patriots in this episode. We have plenty of time to talk about that. Myself and Ben had a chance to talk about our Navy Club last night. We have a whole week to look forward to that as we jet off to San Francisco to look forward to Super Bowl 60. Today, we're talking with the other 30 teams in the league who are all hoping that they'll be represented at Super Bowl 61 next year in Los Angeles. So Bulletin Board Rigdon, as I like to call him. Craig is here to update us on a couple of things that are happening around the league at the moment, mainly in terms of the coaching carousel. But let's start with the juiciest talking point that's getting the world going right now when it comes to the Hall of Fame votes. I never think Hall of Fame votes are always somehow contentious. Maybe we might touch on in the end, or maybe let's just leave it to throw O'Brien. The fact that Eli Manning once again has not been voted into the Hall of Fame, 2-time Super Bowl MVP. Somebody probably should be in the Hall of Fame. But the bigger thing that's happening today is the fact that Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's not past the mark to get in there. And look, full disclosure, full disclosure, we both support teams that Belichick has won Super Bowls with, 2 as defensive coordinator with the Giants, 6 as head coach of the New England Patriots. But I think it's a fair comment to make that if there's anybody in this world that should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, it is Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I always thought that the consensus was you got into the Hall of Fame if the NFL story of the league could not be told without you. And I believe that, for Eli Manning, that is true. But for Bill Belichick, he's like chapter 1 of the NFL story. Like he is. And as a Giants fan, I do have a bit of admiration for him, but I also I'm not the biggest Bill Belichick fan. There was rumors about him coming back or potentially coming to the Giants, and I was not a fan of that at all. I don't think that his coaching style really works anymore in the terms of the modern day player. However, like you said, 6-time Super Bowl champion as a head coach with the New England Patriots. That alone, without any of the other stuff, is enough to have him in as a first ballot. Every single person should vote for him. I know that Brady went off and won 2 by himself, but the dynasty that they built, you look at the players that they had, you watch some of the documentaries, you look at someone like Edelman and what they did with Edelman. Obviously, he went through a lot of ups and downs, and Bill was part of that. But I just cannot believe that he will not make it in. And the story is that, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's one guy who obviously pushed the whole Spygate thing and then the Deflategate thing as well, and someone was saying, "Oh, we need to make an example of the fact that coaches now only need 1 year of eligibility to be able to come into the hall, as opposed to 5, which it was before." If you want to take that argument, that's fine. You take that argument, not with Bill Belichick. I'm sorry. That argument is null and void when it comes to him. You hang that hat on another coach who ends up retiring and has only got a 1 season of eligibility. The fact that Bill Belichick won't be getting a gold jacket in a few months' time is just mind-blowing.
And that's the thing, because a lot of stuff has been talked about, the impact of the whole Jordan Hudson melodrama on his legacy, his end in New England, the fact that no NFL team wanted to touch him, that kind of thing. But I mean, I don't buy into that. I don't buy into that's enough to take him anywhere near being out of the Hall of Fame conversation. It's not as if he's stolen money from a state organization. He's not done anything illegal. He's not being caught being violent. He's just on TMZ all the time because he seems to be in this weird thing with a 20-something-year-old girlfriend. That's, it's great to look at, but it's not disqualifying in terms of the way that we should all be looking at you in the course of history, in the way that, every time we talk about O.J. Simpson, we're like, you know what I mean? It's not in the same category. But what seems to be happening here, and reading about in The Athletic, written by Jacob Robinson, who is one of the 50 voters, but he was like, listen, even he's standing back at this moment being like, I got to take myself out of this thing, because sometimes there are moments like this which just feels like this whole process doesn't make sense. And he says, well, it just seems that a lot of the voters are just becoming too self-absorbed because they feel like they are the ones that must somehow give punishment to Deflategate, which is something which is sorted by the league over a decade ago, for Spygate, something which is sorted by the league over 20 years ago. Whatever way you fall in that argument, it's not for these guys to control. So I don't know. We won't waste too much time on it, but just I'm interested to know what people think. always feel free to reach out to us on our socials and comment to let us know what you think. But it's just this whole thing just makes a big mockery of the process.
Yeah, surely there's got to be something that's now put in place in the terms of this. I know that you're putting your sort of vote in the hands of 50 people, but they aren't, judge, jury, and executioner, as you said. They are there to vote people in that have contributed to the game, and nobody has contributed to the game more potentially than Bill Belichick.
Let's move on now to stuff which is happening in the head coaching carousel. I'm going to go with another thing which is getting the internet sort of riled up a lot in different ways, and that is the fact that Mike McCarthy is now going to be the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Quite the murderer's row of teams that he's been head coach of. If you think of like the great blue chip franchises, the National Football League, being head coach of the Packers, the Dallas Cowboys, and now the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's quite the run, and quite the run of tough fan bases and tough media markets to deal with. And this is the way it is in Pittsburgh right now, because every Pittsburgh fan I know, whether people I know personally or people I see online, is not reacting well to this. They feel like it's a very short-term decision for a team that we know has only had 3 head coaches since 1969 until Mike Tomlin left a few weeks ago. So let us know your feeling on this, because I know, like McCarthy, I think the quality of his offensive coaching wasn't bad in Dallas. I think it just felt like big moment situations let him down, but they've let down the entire franchise, and maybe Pittsburgh might give him a better platform to succeed. But how do you view this head coaching pick from a Pittsburgh point of view in terms of the way that they are acting as an organization?
Yeah, you're right. It does feel like a weird one when you compare it to those previous head coaches. I just feel like what they wanted is they didn't want to rock the apple cart too much. And I think that when you look at the caliber of talent that is out there, they didn't want to take that risk straight away after having Tomlin for so long. And I do think that McCarthy is potentially the safe pick. It's not a sexy pick, but it could be the right one. You're talking about a head coach who has made as many playoff appearances and has won as many games as John Harbaugh. But John Harbaugh's being lauded as the saviour at the Giants, mainly because of what's happened recently. But McCarthy just seems to get frowned upon. I was one of the people who was quite happy with McCarthy and sort of put his name around for the Giants coaching job after Brian Daboll was fired. So I don't see an issue with him. I think if you want stability and you want someone who's going to consistently get you into the playoffs, he's a very, very good choice. It's just the fact that he is not going to be there as long as maybe Tomlin was. But, the Steelers have obviously seen something there that they want, and stability could be their big buzzword at the moment, that they just want to settle down before moving on to their next long-term head coach.
Stability might be a difficult thing, though, because I'm just reading back of the things that are happening. People are like, well, would you like Aaron Rodgers to come back as quarterback? And he seems to be fairly open to that possibility. So maybe we'll have another off season of Rodgers, will he, won't he, kind of melodrama. Don't we love it? Isn't that what every April is supposed to be about? We're supposed to have some sort of Aaron Rodgers melodrama, keeping us ticking over.
Darkness retreats for everybody.
The next piece of news, and I'll let you take the lead on this. The Buffalo Bills have decided who will be their next head coach.
Yeah, Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator, has been promoted. Strange one, this, because obviously they fired Sean McDermott, Joe Brady being part of his coaching staff. And obviously there was something that they didn't like there. And Joe Brady is going to be somebody who's going to have close ties to Josh Allen. He did interview for like 3/4 of the positions that were available. So he's obviously a hot commodity around the league and is very well thought of. I know I said on the AV Club, was it last week? I said, Josh Allen is kind of mollycoddled a little bit in the terms of the Bills organization, and whether this is a case of they don't want to push too far away from the apple tree sort of thing to make sure that he's happy. So Joe Brady was kind of the no-brainer there in the fact that Josh Allen knows what he's going to get. He's not going to have to really change offensive scheme, because I would imagine that will stay the same. So maybe this is a prime example of like damage limitation a little bit from the Bills, to make sure that they don't have to go through a rebuild or, a year of pain to be able to come out the other side.
Yeah, it's an interesting one on the Josh Allen point, because my first reaction was that it feels like this is a franchise that's leaning too much into what their star player wants. And we see a lot of teams do that, and to varying levels of success. We see, we're talking about the decision for when it comes to what they're doing, how they spend their money in Cincinnati, for example. And when you consider the path of Joe Brady, he was the quarterbacks coach. He got the promotion to be a offensive coordinator in 2023 when they dumped. I can't remember who it was now. The name escapes me. But when they made that switch mid-season, and it has been no offensive coordinator since. And it feels like there's obviously, it must be as if like the Owens couldn't keep him as offensive coordinator to hire a defensive head coach. It was like either we give this guy a promotion or we lose him, and then Josh Allen is not going to be happy. So what are we going to do here? First this season in a new stadium, we don't want to have Josh Allen being annoyed at us. But it is interesting at the same time, obviously, McDermott wasn't necessarily a defensive play caller, but defensive side of things. If you look at the DVOA ranks the last 3 seasons, in 2023, in the 6 weeks of regular season since Joe Brady was promoted, their offense was 3rd in the league for DVOA. The defense was 12th in the league. 2024, offense is the 3rd best DVOA, defense the 11th best. And in 2025, 4th best offense, so good consistency there, but 20th best defense in DVOA, 7th best in the yards per rank, and 12th best in points per game, but 20th on the DVOA analysis. So maybe that is a thinking that actually the offense isn't what the problem here. It's play calling. There's obviously a cultural rift, which was the problem with McDermott in the first place when it comes to the whole melodrama, which is coming out afterwards now about Keon Coleman and the recruitment process, and maybe Brady just seems to get on better with the GM in that respect. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one. But now obviously who they bring in to work as OC, but also as defensive coordinator is going to be such an important one there. We'll keep it moving. The Cleveland Browns also have as a new head coach as well.
Yeah, so Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator from the Ravens, he is going to be moving across, staying inside that division there to go and coach at the Browns, which is an odd one because a lot of people turned down that Browns job and it didn't seem like they were really going anywhere with it, and all of a sudden this one's come out of the blue today. The Giants, again, I feel like I'm always spinning the Giants in here somewhere, but the Giants were very high on Monken, were trying to get him as OC. John Harbaugh really made an aggressive push for that, but the Browns are the one who have picked him up, and he ran the offense in Cleveland in 2019 as their offensive coordinator under Freddie Kitchens. I'm sure many Browns fans want to forget about that. But he's now, he's taking over a Browns offense that will rank 31st in points, but do have 2, sophomore quarterbacks going into year 2 in Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So interesting to see what happens there.
Shedeur Sanders, who I think is now a replacement of the Pro Bowl. Did I read that right? So we might actually get to see him next week. Who knows?
The NFL popularity contest.
Who makes the most headlines? Put Shedeur in. That definitely seems the way it works. We've spoken about some other coaching things which have happened across the league. Let's talk about a couple of. Sorry, let's stay in AFC North here. I'm already starting to write my headline for the Baltimore Ravens when things start going on. The minter of discontent. They've managed to bring in a sort of new, young, fresh blood when it comes to trying to replace Harbaugh, who of course was there for nearly 20 years. Jesse Minter now coming in as the head coach. Interesting enough, my colleague Ronan Mullen, who works at the Irish Independent, always says that Jesse Minter looks a lot like Nate Bargatze, the comedian. And if you look at a picture of him, they are uncanny. Like, I actually don't know who would play who in SNL. Like, is Jesse Minter playing Nate Bargatze or the vice versa? But what's interesting, he was the defensive coordinator for the last 2 years at the Chargers. He was defensive coordinator for 2 years at the University of Michigan. He had previously worked in Baltimore as a defensive assistant and defensive back coach before he went and worked in the college game. This seems like sometimes you get these head coaches and they're not the kind of people who I've spoken about a lot on ESPN. They're not the kind of people who we're really expecting much from when this coaching carousel comes in. I sort of think of Mike McDonald actually a couple of years ago when he left Baltimore to become the head coach of the Seahawks. He wasn't a huge name, but he ended up making that leap, and look at him now. He's coaching in the big game. This feels like it's that kind of pick for me that, it's a great position for Minter to be going in. in Baltimore. He obviously interviewed well. He's a young guy. He's a defensive minded guy. And maybe that's kind of what Baltimore needs right now, because defense is the first area, is literally the first thing that's on his list when it comes to coaching a new identity, coaching a better ability to hold on to leads and to not let games bottle. So it's an interesting pick here. And they're not going for some big name in the way that Pittsburgh did. They're going for youth. They're going for a relative unknown, but obviously he's better known within the NFL and football community. And he was doing various interviews around and did a very good job with defensive coordinator of the Chargers. Let's not forget, that was a pretty strong unit. He could deal with a lot of injuries there. So I don't know. I'm kind of excited about this pick. I think this could end up working out well for Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, obviously Mike Macdonald leaves the Ravens. He was their defensive coordinator, goes to the Seahawks, and he was the one who wanted to be the successor to John Harbaugh, but he decided to stick around. And it looks like the sort of front office decided then that they wanted that defensive head coach next, to try and bring somebody else in to get the most out of Lamar Jackson, and that's what they've gone for this time. Obviously, they've gone with Jesse Minter, who you said has been DC at the Chargers for 2 years. He took that defensive unit from 24th in points and 28th in yards to 1st in points and 11th in yards last season, and 5th in total defense and 9th in points this year. So he has a track record of improving defenses quite a lot. But like I said, the most important thing over the next few weeks for Jesse Minter and for that Ravens fan base is going to be who can they get as offensive coordinator. There's still a couple of jobs out there that are unclaimed. Will somebody shake free and potentially take a route to Baltimore for a season to see if they can boost their head coach acumen for next season? Someone like Kubiak, maybe, who might decide that he wants to go somewhere else and take the reins a little bit more and assist somebody that would obviously bump him up. It would be really interesting to see what happens.
Two final things we'll touch on here before I round off with a bit of NFL international look ahead, I suppose, because people are still maybe somehow excited about seeing games in Europe. Let's talk a little bit about Mike McDaniel taking the offensive coordinator job at the LA Chargers. It's funny. It seemed like he had opportunities to go elsewhere. He was very close to taking a job in Atlanta, I think, but has now become OC in LA. I think he's the kind of guy. He was a very, very highly touted, I think, person to become an offensive coordinator somewhere. I know a lot of people in Baltimore who wanted him. I know a lot of people in Philadelphia were still looking for an offensive coordinator who wanted him. I know people in Philadelphia who wanted Miami to fire him mid-season so Philadelphia could pick him up before this season ended. But LA, working with Justin Herbert, he must just like living in the sun, as opposed to potentially. I'm pretty sure he interviewed in Buffalo as well. So himself and Harbaugh now working together at the Chargers, in a very, very tough division. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of creativity he brings, because let's not forget, as much as he's worked with a very good quarterback and the passing game was explosive during his height in Miami. He was a run game coordinator. He's a run guy. That's what he's excellent at, and I think that's an area which the Chargers could use as a boost.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that this is actually a really good thing for McDaniel. I think he can take a step back. He can kind of reset himself a little bit. He goes somewhere where he's got a quarterback who has that Superman gene in the same way that Josh Allen does. Somebody with a lot more arm talent, probably better processing and better decision making than Tua. Someone who actually will open up his playbook a little bit more to allow him to really sort of flex his muscles again and kind of shake off maybe some of the doubters that he's had in this head coaching kind of situation that he's gone through over the last couple of years now. It's an interesting position for him. I think there's still a lot of work to be done for that Chargers offense. I think he needs to fix that offensive line, and he needs to fix that offensive line quickly, because there are pieces there. They've got a good running back. They have Lad McConkey. They still have Keenan Allen, who seems to be sticking around that place, but I think the main draw for him will be Herbert, but also don't kind of discredit the fact that he might just want to go there and speak to Jim Harbaugh for hours on end and kind of really try and sponge or, act as a sponge and take in as much as he can that will help him for his next one. Because I don't think that the Dolphins, his tenure as Dolphins head coach was massively damaging, because I do think that there was a lot of good there, but maybe just a couple of tweaks here and there, and he could be, one of the big hiring or big coaches on the hiring cycle next year.
Something we might talk about more on Radio Row with people is just the future of Cam Ward and Tennessee. It is an interesting storyline, somebody, but of course, just the thing to touch on here, and we won't dwell on it too much, is that Brian Daboll is going to be the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Interesting that, again, few teams you could potentially see him even becoming head coach. I wonder as whether he would become the head coach of Tennessee. Robert Saleh ended up getting that job, and it's two former New Yorkers now working to get former New York head coaches. Now working together in the capital of country music.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows that Jackson Dart was a Brian Daboll pick. Brian Daboll was enamored with him, but let's not forget that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, were banging the table trying to trade up to number one to take Cam Ward, and Brian Daboll was really impressed with him during the pre-draft process. And they would, if they had that number one pick, we would see Cam Ward in New York with them both. Obviously, Brian Daboll is now no longer there. He has decided that he was enamored enough that he wants to go and coach him in Tennessee. And again, I think that's a really, really nice spot for Dabes. I think that gives him the ability to, rebuild his confidence a little bit, because it really did get shot in New York. And obviously it's, I think we've spoken about it before, the Tennessee media is a little bit more lax than New York, and it will work for Saleh and it will work for Daboll, and they'll be able to, maybe quietly go about their business this season and they're going somewhere that probably doesn't have a massive amount of expectation year one, and probably will get a little bit of leeway there.
God forbid somebody gets a bit of space to work so they can actually improve something instead of getting immediate results. What the hell? That's how we roll in the Northeast. Final thing, which I'll spin us through here, is there's reports from Spanish media, AS, I think one of the newspapers, or a big sports paper in Barcelona, is that the league is set to announce in Santa Clara next week that there will be an NFL game in Spain in 2026 and 2027, according to this report in Spain. So just in terms of how we're looking right now for international games next year, there were 7 this year. The belief is going to be 9 next year. We know that there's going to be a game in Australia and a game, and I believe, very strongly believe, has not been confirmed. There is definitely a game in Australia that's confirmed. The LA Rams is going to be hosting a game there. Mexico City is expected to be back on the rotation now that the Estadio Azteca is complete for its renovations that it had leading up to the World Cup. So we have Spain, Rio de Janeiro, as opposed to Sao Paulo, is going to be hosting a game in Brazil. There's going to be 3 in London and 1 in Munich, kind of similar to before. So if I'm counting that right, that's Australia, Mexico, London, that's 5. Spain, Germany, that's 6 and 7. There's one I'm missing there. Brazil, 8. So there's only really room for one more, and it seems to be between. It seems like Paris might get that spot before Dublin. That's the way it looks now. Nothing's been confirmed on that front in terms of like Paris, Mexico City, and Dublin are all still in the frame. Nothing's confirmed for any of those cities. But the way it's looking right now, it looks like it's likely to be a game in Mexico City, game in Paris. Things might end up getting announced, and things change very, very quickly in this league. We don't know what way it's going to go. So it'll be interesting to know what kind of announcements come out over the course of Super Bowl week. But it seems like Madrid is still on the radar for the NFL. And the games in Germany seem to be switching between Munich and Berlin, but only one in Germany. So that's an interesting way to look forward. So, yeah, I think that's it. Excellently done, Bulletin Rigdon. That was, we've come together and spun through a nice piece of news in 25 minutes.
Not bad. We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. All right. Thank you very much for listening to the Irish NFL Show. Make sure you share with as many of your friends as possible, because we will be touching down in San Francisco in only a couple of days' time, where we're going to be set up on Radio Row. We already have plenty of good content planned, and who knows what kind of things we're going to run into over there as well. But now, thank you very, very much for listening to the Irish NFL Show.